Yeah, good morning, folks. Nice to see everybody here at 3's End. This morning, I'm going to begin with a story about how I got to pilot training. It was not an easy journey by any stretch of the imagination. As I have mentioned in earlier videos, I grew up on Air Force bases. My dad was recalled to the Air Force in November 1950, and we left White House, Ohio at that time. And from then on, I grew up all over the world, beginning at Selfridge Field in Michigan, and then Kadena, Okinawa, Tucson, Arizona, Ramey Air Force Base, Puerto Rico, Westover in Massachusetts. We used to call it Massachusetts in those days because we thought they sent the ass to Washington, although I did like Kennedy. At any rate, it was a funny thing for a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid to say. Then we went over to Europe, to Chamblay, and I subsequently graduated from high school at Wiesbaden in West Germany. All right, back to the story at hand. I can remember seeing B-29s fly out of Kadena. I think we got over there in 1953, so the war was over, so they were just coming in and out. Don't know if I ever saw a jet then, don't remember it, but I do remember seeing B-47s flying at Davis-Monthan, probably along with a couple other things every now and then. You couldn't help it. The B-47s, when they took off, they were loud, and they put out just tons of black smoke. And it was always exciting to watch them taking off and coming in. Then when we got down to Ramey, I was able to watch the old B-36 fly. It had 10 engines. It had 6 props and 4 jets on it. And it was something to behold. A huge airplane. And then shortly after we got there, they replaced the B-36 with the B-52. And then I actually saw the U-2 take off one afternoon or one evening. That was kind of exciting too. I began to catch the bug to fly. But not just to fly for the Air Force. I just thought that would be so cool. I had my first ride in an Air Force aircraft where I got to fly it when Colonel Bill Looney, who was the vice wing commander at the time, asked my mom if I could ride along with him over to San Juan one Saturday morning to pick up a distinguished visitor who was coming for something or another, and he needed to go get him. He knew I had an interest in flying. So she said, sure. So we hopped in this utility aircraft. It's called a U-3A, the Blue Goose. And I think that's what it was, or the Blue Canoe. And flew over to San Juan and back. As soon as we got airborne at Ramey, he looked over at me and he said, you ready to fly? And now, I'm a 13-year-old kid. Oh, heck yeah. So he let me fly it, and I remember him talking to me in a cool demeanor, and I was hooked. I just loved that. We flew over there, and I was just in hog heaven. Picked up the DV, flew about 45 minutes back or whatever it was, and I was so mesmerized by that, the hook was set. So we get up to Westover a few years later, 1960, and Mom had befriended a Navy flight surgeon. I guess she met him out at the base or at the club or whatever, I don't know. And he volunteered to give me a small mini physical, if you will, to see if there was anything that would disqualify me from flying. So I met with him down at his office one afternoon, and he listened to heart, lungs, you know, this, that, and the other, had me do all kinds of stretches and whatnot. And then he gave me an eye exam. I had 20/20 vision at that time, but he detected a color deficiency. I could not see all the color plates in those books with the pink and green dots. I was right on the border. But the problem is I was on the border from the wrong side. If there were 15 plates and you needed 8 to pass, I saw 7. If there were, you know, they were always given in odd numbers, and I was always one short. And he said that would probably be disqualifying. Well, at first, my heart was just totally broken. I mean, just I just fell out because, I mean, it was like a dream that was shattered. But then I refused to believe them. I just couldn't believe it. I could see colors. Not only that, I could see shades of colors. I just couldn't see those damn numbers and the pink and green dots and the circles. Oh, well. So I went through the rest of my high school, not giving it much of a second thought, came back to Bowling Green, signed up for the ROTC program. First 2 years went fine. Actually, the third year went fine. And then fourth, when I was about to enter the flying program for my senior year, we all went down to Wright-Patterson to take a physical. And at that physical, they again discovered my color deficiency. But they did something that, as it turned out, it really was a saving grace for my flying career. They gave me a color threshold test. It was beyond the numbers and the pink and green dots. And what it was a test where you had a light test. And the way they scored it is there were different lights that went across the top here of different intensities that came down the side. And what they would do is it was a box, and you sat in this dark room, and you would tell the tech whether you saw red, orange, green, blue, yellow, red, white, and green. Those were the colors, if I didn't miss any. And then they went down different intensities. Well, I took the test, and it turned out I saw 50 of them. And if you take 8 intensities by 8 colors by 8 different intensities, that's 64 answers you can give, and I saw 50, which was passing. I think maybe 48 was passing, but 50 was passing. So they marked that down, passes the color threshold test. But at the time, the Air Force didn't recognize that for their color vision test. And I was not allowed to continue with my with the flying instruction program, FIP program, flight instruction program, and I was just heartbroken. Totally just heartbroken. So I stumbled through my senior year. I just kind of was there. It was kind of a blur. I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I wanted to fly so bad. At one point, maybe a year later, the Navy showed up on campus with a T-34, and they were giving rides if you went out and expressed an interest in Navy ROTC. Well, hell yes, I'm interested in Navy ROTC. I mean, who wouldn't want to land on a boat that was pitching and rolling at night in the rain? I mean, that just sounds like a lot of fun. So they threw me in the back of this T-34, and I knew I was going to go on that ride. So I had an old leather jacket that I wore in those days, and I had a scarf, about 8 feet long, 8 feet long, a silk scarf. And boy, I was going to Red Baron it all the way. So we take off, we're flying along, and I had that scarf wrapped around my neck, so I thought, how cool would that look if I took that scarf and tossed it out the window, kind of like Snoopy and Red Baron. So I did. I damn near choked to death. That wind, the prop wash or the wind caught that scarf and grabbed hold of it and started hauling it back, and it yanked my head out. I'm up there like this trying, here I am, a 19, 20-year-old kid, sitting there like this trying to keep from strangling myself, and the guy up front says, "Isn't this flying great?" And I'm, "Oh yeah, this is really great." So I managed to haul it in, came in and landed, and I thought, maybe the Navy's not for me. But anyway, I'd go to any lengths like that to fly. I just loved it so much. So anyway, assignment time came, and there was a note on the bulletin board from Sergeant Franz, who is the admin clerk in the ROTC detachment. It said, "Holliker, see me, assignment." Cool. Wonder what I'm going to be doing. So I went in to see him, and here it turned out I was given a slot to aerospace munitions at Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado. Well, isn't that interesting? I don't, if you can't drop the bombs, maybe loading them would be fun. I don't know. So one day when I was just in there kind of milling around smartly, I walked over the training manual, opened it up to see what are the prerequisites to be a munitions officer. And what it said was college degree, commissioned officer, and then it said normal color vision. Well, son of a bitch. You're going to let me go be a munitions officer, but you won't let me fly. Man, that was tough. That was a bitter pill to swallow. But swallow it I did, because I thought, if I go in and say something to these geeks, they're going to put me in fuels or personnel or morale, welfare, and recreation or some dumb thing like that. And I really don't want to do that. I'd rather be out near the airplanes. And I didn't even think what aircraft maintenance, what the prerequisite of that was. So anyway, I just let that go. So I went out to Lowry upon graduation, spent 6 months at munitions school there, graduated, and didn't have any trouble at all, as you might imagine. And then was assigned to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Now think about this. I'm 21 years old, and my first 2 stations are at Lowry in Denver for 6 months, and then at Nellis at Las Vegas. I mean, life was good. So I get out to Las Vegas in January, and in February, I got to thinking to myself, you know, I've not taken a physical on active duty, a flight physical on active duty. Maybe if I take one on active duty, they'll look at things a little bit different than they did when I was a cadet. So I called up the flight surgeons and made an appointment to go in to take a flight physical. And they set me up, so I head over there and was going through my flight physical. And when the little... they brought out the book with the pink and green dots. I'd say, they'd show me a number in there, and I'd say 8. And the airman would say, well, I think you ought to subtract 5. 3? I was always a lot better at math than I was those damn color plates. So he says, okay, good. So he'd go on, and it kind of went that way, and I passed. Oh man, I'm on my way. This is exciting. Well, and once again, in conjunction with that, they did give me that color threshold test, and again, I scored a 50 on it. Okay, fine. So they took the application, sent it to TAC headquarters, and TAC headquarters looked at it. It was all straightforward. And then they sent it down to San Antonio, to the Surgeon General's office in San Antonio. And as it turned out, my mom worked in that office at the time. She was secretary for the Surgeon General. And they recognized that a person with color vision, the color vision doesn't change. That's one thing that you're born with, and it stays with you for life. So they bounced it. Based on the score I got on the color plate exam. They just wouldn't believe that I could pass that test, and in reality I couldn't. So I get called into a flight surgeon's office by a very angry flight surgeon, actually the chief of the flight surgeons, and he wanted to know who gave me the test. And he had 3 or 4 airmen standing there. And I said, sir, I don't know. I was looking at the color plates. I'm a second lieutenant, and these guys are all sergeants and whatnot. And I said, sir, I I can't remember who gave it to me. I was looking at the test. I said, I wasn't looking at the airmen. Well, all you had to do is stand back and look at the one that gave me the test was the guy that was standing there shaking. But anyway, I didn't say anything about it, and we kind of let it go. And once again, I left that office very disheartened. I was watching F-4s and F-105s and F-111s and everything else flying in and out of Nellis, and I knew damn well that if I had that opportunity, I could do that also. Now, I want to take a second here and regress into the story a bit. After I graduated from college in June, before I started munitions school, I went down to San Antonio to visit my folks, and while I was there, I went out to Randolph one day. I was in uniform, and I walked over to base ops, and I sat down on the curb there in front of base ops. I just sat down there and was watching the T-38s doing touch and goes. That was the T-38 side of the base, and I'm watching these guys doing touch and goes and takeoffs and landings. And I just loved it. I just watched, I could feel it. And then this kid came in and flared too high and ended up splattering the damn thing. And I just shook my head and I said, you know, God, if I were given a chance, I don't think I'd splatter an airplane like that. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but eventually he gave me a chance, and sure enough, I splattered a few myself. But anyway, let's get back to February 1969, and I left that office totally disheartened. I was disheartened. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I got back and I'm looking at career progression. Where can I go as a munitions officer? Well, I could go to EOD, Explosives Ordnance Disposal. So I put in an application for that, and they disqualified me for that because I was colorblind. Are you guys reading what you're putting out here anyway? So I had that. And then comes August. Now, during this time, this is 1969, we were losing a hell of a lot of guys in Vietnam at that time, with McNamara and Johnson and the Whiz Kids essentially running the war. We had to comply with their ROE, the rules of engagement, which were really stupid. And guys were getting shot out of the sky, and we began to experience a pilot shortage. So in early August, they decided to accept the FAA's standard for color vision. That's one of the things they did that thought would give them a few more applicants. And that's the way I got in. The FAA uses color threshold test. So the Air Force adopted that. And my mom called me, and because she had gotten wind of that, she saw this come across her desk, that the Air Force was now going to recognize this test. So she called me and said, hey, listen, Bobby, she said, do you remember what your scores were on this test? And I told her they were 50 or 50, 48, 50. And she said, well, you can pass now. She says, why don't you make yourself an appointment and begin the application process again. So I said to her, Mom, I said, I don't know if I want to be disappointed again. I said, I don't know if I could do that. She said, listen, you little shit. She says, ever since you've been a little kid, I've had to listen to you wanting to fly jets. And, you know, she said, I don't know what you're doing, but she said, you get your ass over that flight surgeon's office and make an appointment. And she says, I won't hear anything more about it. I said, yes, ma'am. Hung up, went over there, made an appointment. When it came time to take the color vision test, I had a cast of thousands in that room watching me. Now, one thing that I did that almost screwed me was I had the printout from the test, one of the earlier tests I had taken. So right across the top, it's red, orange, green, blue, yellow, red, white, green. I memorized it. And I knew the way the machine worked. You listen to the clicks at the end of the sequence. So if there was one click, they went down and then would give you the colors going back. If there were two clicks, they went down and they went back to the beginning to come across. Okay, fine. I damn near outsmarted myself, because when the results came out for that second test here in August, I had 58. Now, that would have raised a red flag to go from 48 or 50 to 58. And so I said to the tech, after they took the test and everybody was happy with it, I said to the tech, I said, hey, listen, I said, we need to find out a way to reduce this a little bit. I said, that's, you know, so he scratched out a white here, wrote a green. Well, that then wiped out everything below, and that gave me a 55 on the test instead of a 58, which was cool. It wasn't too much of an anomaly, but it worked. So anyway, the paperwork all gets put together, and off it goes again. So September comes around. I haven't heard anything from it being approved or whatever. And then early October, I called down to Mom, and I said to her, I said, "Hey, Mom," I said, "have you heard anything on that physical?" And she says, "No, I'll go back and look." Well, she got to looking around. She discovered that the physical had indeed come down to her office. And when it was being reviewed, there was a staff sergeant in the back that, for whatever reason, he had it in for Mom. And he saw where I needed a filling, just a stupid filling. So he bounced the physical. So the physical had come back to Nellis, unbeknownst to us, and was sitting over there in the flight surgeon's office waiting for me to make an appointment to get this filling fixed. So I found out about it, and I said, "Hey, Mom, I don't know if she discovered went on or whatever." So I went over, made an appointment, got right in. They filled it, and the application headed back down to Texas. Well, I go back to the office and don't think anything one way or the other about it. And I get a call from General Wiederman at the time, the flight surgeon, the Air Force flight surgeon. And he says, "Bobby," he says, "we just got your physical with the everything that looks good." He says, "I'm approving it as we speak." He says, "Where would you like to go to pilot training?" I had no idea I had an idea where some of the bases were, but I didn't know where I wanted to go. I said, "Sir," I said, "I'd be happy going to any of them." He said, "Well, let me suggest you come to Randolph here." He said, "It's the premier pilot training base we have in the Air Force." He says, "You'd be around your family." He said, "They get to watch you go through." And he says, "I think that'd be real fun for you." He said, "San Antonio is a great city." And he didn't have to say any more. I said, "Okay, sir." I said, "That'd be fantastic." And he says, "I want you to know something else." He said, "I called that staff sergeant in, the one that bounced your physical, and was able to give him 2 sets of orders." He said, "By the time you get here, he will be gone. He's on his way to Vietnam." And then I said, he said, "The second set of orders I was able to get for him is his follow-on assignment to Minot, North Dakota." He said, "I wanted to make it very clear to him who actually runs the Air Force. It's not staff sergeants." Whoa! So at any rate, that's how I got into pilot training, and that's how I was assigned to Randolph. And I reported to Randolph in April of 1970, and in April 1971 I graduated and asked General Wiederman to attend, along with my folks, of course, and family, and it was really just a wonderful day that day. One of the things we did in those days when I graduated, it's a tradition, they had us break our wings. I don't know if it's a myth or not, but the tradition was to break your wings. The idea being is if you break them on the ground, you'll never break them in the air. Well, several of us bought into it, and several didn't. You know, it was whatever. I thought it was kind of neat, so I broke mine. And these are the one half of the wings I kept for myself. A friend of mine has my other half. And I told him, I said, "Don't ever lose those." I said, "If you do," I said, "I think I'm in peril." But at any rate, went on to have a great career. Was off to a little bit of a rocky start, but I am so grateful for those that were instrumental in me getting into pilot training and my instructors, and I had a ball, just had a ball flying for the United States Air Force. Thanks for tuning in. Nice to see everybody today.